Hello, and welcome to Leverage Point's monthly webinar series. This month's topic is Dealing with Rising Commodity Prices with our special guest presenter, Dr. Tom Nagle. Leverage Point provides the only software solution for value-based pricing. You can find out more about us by visiting our website, www.leveragepoint.com. There you will find a recording for this and previous webinars, as well as other resources. Let me introduce you to our presenters today. Tom Nagle is Senior Partner of the Monitor Group and is the lead author of the top-selling book on pricing for 2 decades, The Strategy and Tactics of Pricing, now in its 5th edition. Joining him is Leverage Point's own VP of Sales, Jay Manson. Jay is a business development professional with a focus on value-based pricing, marketing, and sales. He's formerly from Vendavo and the Strategic Pricing Group. Take it away, Jay.
Okay. Hey, thank you all so much for joining us. Please know that if you are in sales and marketing, pricing, or finance, whether you are a strong believer in the power of pricing or you're still questioning how to leverage pricing for profitable growth, know that you are all very welcome here at Leverage Point, and we're extremely happy to have you here. It is a great pleasure that we have Tom Nagle joining us, and we're excited about this topic. Over the past few months, almost all of our customers or prospects have been pulled into at least one, if not many, quote, pricing fire drills. And the reoccurring theme that we've heard around these pricing fire drills is this dramatic change that we're seeing in commodity prices. The slide on the screen that you're seeing today shows the CRB, which is really an index of 17 commodities. And you can see from 2000 to 2011, there has been a pretty consistent rise in raw material costs. The reality is we had a little bit of a respite in 2008 to 2009 where raw material costs dropped, but we're seeing them charge back. And all signs are that this trend is going to continue. Raw material costs are rising. There's increased demand for raw materials around the globe, and that puts pressure on all of us. The real question that most customers are asking is, how do we maintain our margin as these raw material costs rise? And it's particularly challenging in this environment today. And there are 2 central reasons for it. One of the reasons is our supply chain have become extremely efficient. And I really think over the past 2 years, we've seen organizations drive tremendous cost out of their supply chain. And while driving that cost out of their supply chain, they've driven down their inventories. Driving down those inventories means that a small change in raw material costs is something that we feel immediately in the go-to-market aspects of these business. And we're feeling it throughout the supply chain. So the rubber band, if you will, is stretched really tight. And because it's stretched really tight, we need to be responsive and we need to cover ourselves so that we're able to maintain our margin growth. And there is more pressure on Wall Street now around margin growth than ever before, and organizations are feeling it. On the flip side of that, what we're also seeing is that customers are starting to understand that these raw material costs are going up, and customers are starting to hedge their inventories. Basically, they're trying to buy in front of what they know is coming, this raw material cost jump. Now, the issue around this of customers buying in front of it, it means our sales numbers, while they may look good from the last few quarters, that may come back to bite us. Customers may be building up these inventories so they can turn to us in 2 months, 3 months, when we try and raise price and say, we're all set, we'll just burn down these inventories. The dynamic here is a really interesting dynamic, and it's really something that we haven't seen in a number of years. And it's part of the reason why I'm so happy that Tom is with us today. Tom has a number of years of experience dealing with these types of environments with companies. And unlike a lot of thought leaders, Tom really has been a hands-on professor. He's a hands-on professor who's understood the economics of what's happening as well as the practical application of how do you overcome that. So I think I want to pass the microphone to Tom now so that he can talk through how he sees this challenging environment and specifically what are specific action steps we can all take to address this challenging market.
So thanks, Jay, for pointing out how old I am. But I was a professor of economics at University of Chicago during the last time we had this problem in the 1970s. And I recall back to that time that because of the nature of accounting systems that tend to tie cost to an individual product, a lot of companies in the 70s, when we had ever-increasing inflation, did the following. They said, okay, we don't have to worry about the increase in the cost of the raw materials until the products that included the more expensive raw materials actually get in front of the customer, and those have to be sold higher. But the things that if we have 2 months worth of inventory or 2 months worth of products in work in process, we don't need to rush to get these price increases out because we're still making good margin on the products that we're selling to customers now because we had cheaper materials when we were doing that. That turned out to be a serious mistake, and the reason it turned out to be a serious mistake is because of the impact on cash flow. Yeah, it looked on the income statement like our profits were exactly where they were before, but every time we were selling a product to a consumer, it was now costing more money to actually buy the materials to put that to replace that product in inventory. So companies were having to have ever-increasing amounts of cash to do the same amount of business. And that was okay until finally 1980, the Fed decided that they needed to do something about this ever-increasing inflation. And when interest rates went up, it killed companies because they had leveraged themselves now ever increasing through the 1970s by consistently financing the increasing cost of raw materials, not from their revenues but from borrowing. You can't afford to do that. As soon as those raw material costs hit, as quickly as possible, you want that to be reflected in your prices, even if it wasn't reflected in the cost of producing those particular products. So with that, we need to talk about how we begin to go about doing that. And it obviously isn't easy. Our customers, when they see those raw materials costs coming, they see that the price of oil going up, they see the price of titanium going up, they see the price of iron ore going up, they know it's coming, but they're going to sit on and do everything they can to delay it as long as possible. So how do we overcome this resistance and accelerate the process? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to understand the causes of the resistance. And then for each one of them, there's a way to manage it. So first resistance is the fear on the part of the customers that you hit them with this price increase and they can't pass them along quickly enough to avoid some near-term hit in profit. It's like, wait a second, I just signed a deal that for something that I'm going to deliver, I'm going to manufacture over the next 3 months, I'm going to deliver it 3 months from now, and now you're telling me about the price increase. So now this deal that I thought was going to be profitable is not going to be, it's going to be unprofitable because I was taking it on the basis of the cost of what they were yesterday. Now you're doing this to me all of a sudden. And that is a really legitimate argument on the part of your customers. Are you a partner with them or not a partner with them? So the first point is don't sneak up on them. As soon as you have a sense that the costs that are going into your product are increasing, you need to be letting customers know these costs are increasing, so you need to be planning for cost increases in our product because a cost. If the titanium goes up by a certain amount, then your packaging has to go up. That represents X% of the cost of your packaging, so your packaging costs have to go up. And we are anticipating by the second quarter, packaging cost increases of having to be 3%. So you should be planning for that in your bids for your customers. There obviously are situations where you're not getting the advance notice. You can't see the thing coming, and it's a big number, in which case, on those kinds of things, I would strongly recommend hedging for whatever number of months you need in order to be able to give your customers that number of months advance notice that it's coming through without having to take the hit on your, without having to take the hit in your cash flow. And again, it's not your margin that we're looking at, it's your cash flow that we're looking at, because you can have good margins all through an inflationary period and get nailed on the cash flow. The third issue is if you must increase without warning, then customers are going to then have all these reasons for well, we have to study this. Well, we're not sure we're going to accept this. Well, we have to run this through. We have to now do a new bidding process. We have to, anything. Purchasing will be pros in delaying this process. And one of the things that I have seen work is the following: that you go to those customers and you say, if you agree immediately and contractually to maintain your volumes and accept this increase, then in that particular case, we can do things to help you here. We can take it in steps. So you'll get a third of the increase immediately, a third of the increase the second month, a third of the increase in the third month. Because we realized we didn't realize this was coming. You're hanging out there. We realize, some of your business has already been bid, and we're willing to work with you. So you have to accept. You're not going to reduce your volumes. You're accepting the increase. Alternatively, if you aren't accepting the increase, you're going out to bid, then the full amount starts today. Okay. The reason being, obviously, what you're trying to do is you're trying to say, if you're going out and shopping the business to other people, why should we carry you for any time whatsoever to do that? But if you're willing to make a commitment, we're willing to work with you, because normally we'd like to give you more notice. Okay, but that's just one of the resistances. Sometimes there's just a basic sense of fairness that the customers are saying, look, if we were totally back out of the recession and our margins were back up to where they were before, we'd have some give to be able to accept this. And then we'd be able to say, okay, if we're making good margins, of course we have to share that with our suppliers. But you know what? We're still struggling, and you're not being a good partner working with us here. I'm feeling like you're really treating us unfairly. And that sense of unfairness is something that you really have to deal with. However ridiculous it may seem, you really have to deal with it. And it's something where companies don't deal with it well, and I have seen this, is they've said, come in and talk to our salespeople about the impact of this, because we got to give them some just backbone to go out there and meet every one of those customers and tell those customers the prices have to go up, and our salespeople just have to get backbone and be tough. Well, no, wait a second. You send the sales rep out, and now the customer's saying, is this sales rep just trying to jerk me around? Is this really necessary? Is maybe what I need to do is call up and find another sales rep. I need to go to somebody higher up in the company. I say, I'm not going to accept this. I want to talk to your boss. And of course, all of this is creating lags and delays, and it's also creating a lot of resistance on the part of the customers, an emotional resistance. You can't allow this whole process to be something that just gets dumped on the sales organization. This is a marketing responsibility to create a program for the price increase. And that program has to involve managing the customer's expectations regarding fairness. How do we do that? The first thing is you don't send the sales reps out to tell the customer that you've got these major price increases. The company as a whole has to announce. Your president, senior people, or the head of this division sends memos out to all customers, sends emails out and says, we regret the fact that due to these commodity cost increases, we're having to raise all prices to all customers, contract and not contract customers, by 5% for this SKU, 4.6% for this SKU. You're laying it all out. Okay, the customers are getting this. Now they're upset. But they aren't upset at the sales rep, and they're not feeling like the sales rep is trying to jerk them around. They're feeling that the company is doing this, and they're sending the sales rep out. The sales rep now can go out and say, you know, I sympathize with you. You know, this is tough. I realize. How can I work with you to take the edge off of this? And this is where marketing has to come up with other alternatives. What are things that we can do so that if you can't take this price increase, we can do other things? So, you know what? If you could take less frequent deliveries in larger orders, then we could ship you in truckloads, and that would enable us to take a little bit of this increase off. And you know what? If you've always insisted that you won't review the specs on this particular thing you've been buying from us, and that's fine. But you know what? A lot of customers who are selling products just like yours are not having those same demanding specs. And if we can lower those specs a little, then we can use a little less of these rapidly increasing commodities in making your product, and we might be able to do something there. Do you want to work with me on it? You know, if you could do electronic ordering, and you could give us you could give us a lot more lead time in your ordering coming in, I can probably do something there for you. You know what? Even if purchasing turns out that they can't accept any of these, you have created a sense with the customer that at least you're trying to work with them, and they're much more likely to work with you. Alternatively, if you just go in and say, "There's no way, this is the number," then you're getting much more of a sense of, okay, this is just pushing back, and we've got to push back too. So marketing ideally is taking the hit. The company is taking the hit for the price increase, and then marketing is supplying ways for the sales rep to go in and now work with the customer to cut the cost of serving them in a way that that can compensate for the commodity cost increase, rather than having to do it purely with a price increase. The other thing that you really want to make sure that you're doing is being transparent about the impact of the cost. And one way to particularly do that, particularly if the customers are saying, I realize, you're in this situation where you're just using the price of oil. The price of oil goes up 5%, and now you're telling us you have to have a 3% increase in price. I think that's excessive. I think that, you know what, if you don't believe that, and you're just doing that, you're using the price increases to get this, but what about when prices go down? One way to take the edge off of this is to just do a surcharge tied to an index, where you say, you know what, when the prices go down, when the commodity costs go down, our prices will go back down too. We're just trying to maintain a reasonable, fair margin to continue to provide the service and make the investments to deliver you product the way we've been doing before. And this is not an attempt to rip you off. This is an attempt to reflect the cost of the product. And that's another way to take some of that edge off of that potential claim of unfairness. Finally, and this is a big one, the customers fear becoming competitively disadvantaged, or they're hoping to get a short-term competitive advantage because they realize they're going to have to accept this price increase, but they don't want to be the first one to accept it. They want to be the last one to accept it. So how do you deal with that? The first is that you go into a situation where you never negotiate away the ultimate increase. I have worked with clients, and this again was through the 1970s when the high inflation was there. I worked with clients who just got rolled by a big customer over and over again, because what they do is every time the client had to raise prices 5%, they'd say, "But you're our best customer. We don't pay the full prices. We always get a discount. We always get a 40% discount. So therefore, the 5% price increase, we should only take 3% of it." And I hear companies all the time talking about, we went through with this 5% increase, and it was and was really good. We were able to hold on to 2.5. God, you're educating your customers to resist. When it comes to price increases that reflect cost increases, you cannot establish the principle that you're willing to negotiate those away. In part, as soon as you give the customer the idea that you're negotiating them away for anyone, including them, then there's the fear, well, how much better might somebody else be getting? I'll bet if they resisted stronger, they're only accepting 2% of the increase, and we're getting stuck with 4%. We can't do that. You've got to treat everybody across the board that they're taking. Now, but you say, wait a second, we have some large customers we cannot afford to lose. You give those large customers you can't afford to lose a most favored nation commitment. You are going to pay the price increase. We cannot, but I understand. You're afraid others aren't going to get it. We'll give you a most favored nation. If we have to back off on this for any of your competitors, we'll have to back off on it for you, but we're not expecting to do that. By the way, the most favored nation increase also gives you a little bit more backbone that if we do it for one customer, it's going to come back and bite us, and we have to do it for a lot, and that's give your organization more backbone. As a last resort to save a customer you absolutely, positively cannot lose, and don't tell your sales organization this; they'll claim you can't lose all of them. But for a customer that you absolutely can't lose, agree to delay the timing of the increase until equal quality competitors of yours match the increase. Or a better way is to say, you're going to pay it right away, but if the competitors aren't matching it, we'll give you a rebate until they are matching. Now, again, that's not something you announce widely, but that's something when you say, we cannot have this, we cannot afford to lose this customer. But at the same time, you don't want to agree to give that customer a lower increase. You say, what's your concern? We'll accommodate your concern. Here's the increase. It'll be on your invoice, but we'll give you a rebate each month if the competitor hasn't gone through with that same thing. Okay, but it's not just the customer resistance you're concerned about. You've often got a situation where all the competitors in the industry are facing this cost increase. Everybody wants it to happen. Everybody wants to raise their prices, but nobody wants to be the one to go first because they're the ones that are going to take the most abuse from the purchasing people. How do you ease that situation? How do you make it easier for your competitors to do that without actually doing something that's against the law, which is talking to them or signaling to them? Well, the key responsibility there is the industry leader. Who is the company whose product is the one that everyone would like to buy if they could afford it, and that all the other companies that have lower prices sell against? That company has to take the lead. And how do they take the lead? Well, the first thing they do is they, in very public statements, have to describe the need. They're already doing that for the customers. We've argued above that you've got to let the customers know it's coming. In the process, you're letting the competition know it's coming. Now, you're not implementing it yet, but you are letting everybody know it's coming. And then you throw in the additional thing, it's coming, and we are going to do this increase to cover the cost so long as it appears that we can do so without any major loss in market share. If we run the risk of a major loss in market share, unfortunately, we're going to have to eat this. The street isn't going to like that. They're going to press down your stock for a little bit, but it's in the long run, you're better off because you're telling the competition, you know what, guys, if we go out there with the increase and then you exploit it, we're going to have to roll it back. And the second thing is you do roll it back if necessary to demonstrate that otherwise it won't happen. Hertz does this all the time. They announce the increase, they say it's going to happen, Avis gets on board, and then some, dollar doesn't follow, and they say, okay, we rolled it back. But if you announce the street, we're going to do it next month. Okay? All right, I realize this was a lot very quickly, but you can get all of these slides on the Leverage Point website. At this point, though, what I've been talking about is all the things that you need to do in order to get your business in a situation and get your customers and your competitors having expectations that as these inflation gets back rolling again, and given our behavior of our Federal Reserve and that of the European Central Bank, I'm certainly expecting that there's going to be a multi-year period of inflation in commodities. Given that, this is what we need to do. The question is, how do you get your organization to actually function in a way that they can deliver on this? And that's something that the Leverage Point for Value Management software can help you with. So with that, I'm going to flip over to Jay, and he'll talk about that.
Thanks very much, Tom. I have to say, I have to admit, I was taking notes, and I've heard you give this talk before, but it's really informative to listen to it now. For those of you on the phone, Leverage Point for Value Management is really designed as an application to help organizations capture price in the field. And our belief that so many of our customers and so many prospects are coming to us because our application is really designed around price realization. It's one thing, as Tom described, to set a price increase, but if you're only realizing 2.5% on a 5% price increase, did you really capture that price increase? And our application is really designed to help you capture that price increase. So there are three core elements of our application. The first piece is helping finance, marketing, and pricing come together to develop a coherent strategy around how do we implement a price increase. When that's created, and Tom talked about this specifically, marketing, pricing, and finance need to come together to put together a program that can be passed to sales. That price increase package that gets passed to sales is then provided to sales in a format so that sales and customers can have a conversation. They can have a conversation, and that conversation is captured. Customers are able to give feedback around that program. Where do they believe in the program? Where don't they believe in the program? Your organization is able to get feedback into the pricing strategy to continue to improve it. The feedback loop that our application provides allows you to effectively understand how are we capturing price increase? Where are we experiencing resistance? Is the resistance reasonable? Tom just outlined a whole series of places where the resistance is reasonable. Is the resistance reasonable? How do we want to respond to it? Or is the resistance purely procurement bluster and we've got to keep driving home? And ultimately, our application allows you to learn internally how are we going to do this better. And from everything that Tom described, it looks like raw material costs are going to continue to rise, and we're going to need to get better and better at doing this going forward. So time is of the essence. We have cash flow issues that we're going to need to address, clearly. But we also, as Tom talked about, we don't want to sneak up on our customers. We want to be proactive around it. And these standard principles that are laid out on these slides are, straight out of the strategies and tactics of pricing that Tom wrote so many years ago. And Tom, I won't mention your age again. But they're core principles here, right? It's about a value-based approach, not a cost-based approach. It's about being profit-driven, not share-driven. It's about being proactive, not reactive. The challenge is, in a challenging market like we are experiencing today, we often forget these core principles. And the reality is, because of the downward pressure that had existed over the past 2 years, maybe we've forgotten a little bit about how we apply these principles. Pricing technology enables growth. The leverage point solution will allow you to grow profitably through this challenging marketplace. Now, we have received a series of questions during the course of the webinar, and I thought it would be, since we have Tom captured for a few more minutes, I thought it was worth firing out some more of these questions. So, Ed, I don't know if you want to read some of these.
Well, first of all, great job, gentlemen. Learned a lot from this, and thank you very much, Tom and Jay, for a great presentation. A couple questions did come in during the presentation, and the first one is, for those customers who are on a contract, a good way to handle commodity cost increases are to have escalation clauses in the contract. Yes, I guess like that is. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, no, I love that because a number of things. One is it says we're going to be really transparent and fair about this, because the escalation clause is also a de-escalation clause, and the second is, and the more important is, it happens very quickly. So if you can tie this to a quickly to an index that is updated very frequently, then you're probably cutting the amount of time between the increases and when you actually can actually get the prices that reflect the increase. You're probably cutting that massively if you can get these in your contracts.
Great. Another question is, when you define a warning, how much time do you feel is adequate warning?
That really depends upon the nature of your customer's business. If your customer's business is one that they can change prices very quickly, then I'm less concerned. But right now we're working with a company in packaging, and they're selling to people like say Kraft, and Kraft wants a contract for the packaging for the product that they're going to produce. They want to know what it's going to cost them for something that's going to be delivered 6 months down the line. And to tell somebody they're getting a price increase today when they have to deliver product 6 months down the line at a fixed price is really problematic in that situation. In other situations, they're making the product immediate at the same time they're selling and everything. You don't have to give them nearly as much advance notice.
Okay, we just got a new question, and that is, can you speak to retail products, example, consumer packaged goods or low unit price items that rely upon high turnover for profit versus value-based or service products?
Yes, and the ones that the retail product that really requires the very, very high turnover, that's definitely a case where I think you need to do this a whole lot faster and need to be prepared that even if you have a short-term loss in volume for a week or two or whatever, that can very, very easily be made up on the fact that the much larger margin you're going to have than when the competitors prices are back up there in line. This particular webinar was particularly focused on more B2B, but I've talked about this same issue for consumer products, and that webinar is on the monitor.com website. So if you're really in consumer products, I suggest that you might want to take a look at that. I did that webinar with two other people as well. It's an hour long, but it's totally focused on consumer and retail and dealing with the cost increases.
Okay.
So Tom, if I could just add on to this, though, one of the key elements to understand around retail products is that retail products are more and more being sold into big box retailers, and there needs to be a value-based approach as you sell to those big box retailers, and there needs to be an understanding of the business economics that are associated with those organizations as well. So that they're really, when you're dealing with selling a product at a retail level, you're dealing with pricing at two levels. One is the price at the consumer level. The other is the price to the big box retailer. And those big box retailers are in a lot of fear right now about these raw material cost increases.
Yeah, and everything we've talked about here is relevant for that interaction with that big box retailer. You know, when I actually had in mind when I was lecturing, when I was talking, you know, the big company you can't afford to lose being like the Walmart or whatever. Just, you know, you can't do this to us because we're not going to go out there and risk being not competitive with Target until we're sure Target is taking the price increases. We're not going to take them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I have another one here. This is a B2B situation where you have a premium product that's competing against commodities. And the specific question is, do we maintain stable pricing over a period of time and let the commodities go up and down around us, or is it better to go up and down with the market to maintain our value-based spread?
I suspect, at being the premium product, that you are the company that the cheaper products sell against. Because they're saying, you know, you don't really need that premium product. It's because it's, you know, we're almost as good, we're better, but you know, and if that's the case, then absolutely you need to be moving your prices, because you know, and because if you don't, you know, what you have to keep in mind is that although there's some prices like oil that are going up and down and up and down, most of these products are going to be going nowhere but up. They're going to be a lot more up than down. And you've got to begin as the market leader to establish that leadership and the principle that it is in everyone's interest when you raise your prices for them to follow.
So we've run a little bit over of the half hour that we generally schedule for these, but with someone like Tom on the line, it's hard not to. I hope this webinar was informative for all of you, and we're always interested in hearing more feedback from you. We have a whole series of questions that we just won't have time to get to, but please feel free to contact me directly, and we can continue these conversations. As I said at the beginning, whether you are in sales or marketing or pricing or finance, you're always welcome here at Leverage Point. We want to hear your ideas. And if there are specific topics that you would like to have us discuss on these webinars, please feel free to pass those along. Again, Tom, thank you so much for your time. We truly appreciate it. And for all of you on the phone, we look forward to talking to you next month about the same time.
It was a pleasure, Jay. Thank you.